of the Houston Astros. And I definitely think that the Orioles can look at the Astros with aspirations of grandeur. I think it's fine. They're justified aspirations of grandeur. Elias is really smart, and if he has the backing of ownership, essentially to redesign their minor league system to kind of focus philosophically, but also technologically that Houston, the way that Houston had, then it'll work out. Really, like the Orioles should be competitive in a few years. I have no doubt about it.
What's fascinating to us is how many things have changed, right? Like, forget the Angelos thing. Like, I wrote a book on that, right? And all the craziness, and even through last summer that they allowed the old regime to deal off all the parts. And then they, literally Elias and Meidel found scorched earth that didn't even need to be all that scorched. I mean, they could have hauled on the Gosman and gotten more than a bag of baseballs out of him in Atlanta, but they would also had the contract of O'Day. So they found this franchise in this state of nothingness. It was like sand, I guess, as well as the Chris Davis contract, which is still sitting there that we talk about around here. But I'm sure they knew that when they took the gig as well. It's amazing how many things they've changed in regard to chips and bats and cameras and angles and things that just were unheard of. And in reading Astro Ball and even reading further along, Ben Lindbergh's doing a thing that the Astros are this gold standard of a new way to do things, and no one in the Orioles organization had seen anything like this until July when Duquette dealt all these guys out, and they came in here from places like the New York Yankees and various places where they dealt off guys, Dodgers as well, and there's a whole new thing going on here, and you really see that it was like the Flintstones here, for a long time and how they ran things, and the Astros are more like the Jetsons. I don't know how fast-tracked that can be when you're competing with the Yankees and the Red Sox and their money, and quite frankly, the fact that the Rays have sort of gotten up and ran a little bit here so far, and it feels like they're on the front end of doing something, that it does feel like hope can be turned around a little bit, but there's no further place to see where we are and where we want to go than this weekend, right? Like when you look at the Astros, look at the full stadium, look at the bars and grills, look at what they've done there in the aftermath of this, and even saying to Dallas Keuchel, we don't want you, right? Like those are tough things when the star players, when it comes their time to be gone down there in Houston. It's going to be a tough bye-bye to the little fellow from Venezuela that I love so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think yes and no to some of the things you said. What's interesting about the Astros Major League roster is that it actually has very few players that came up through the system under Jeff Luhnow. So it's a lot of these players were acquired. They were smartly identified and acquired either in trades or as off-season signings rather recently. So Friday, for example, Cole is going to pitch against the Orioles, right? And here's a guy that the Astros traded for. And the only reason they were able to really pull the trigger on a trade for him, however, is because at that point in their development 2 seasons ago, they had just the right assets to go after a guy who, in 2 years later would hit free agency and probably leave the Pirates. So, part of the development is also it's in concert with both developing talent in your organization, but also you have to have the ownership that is going to put up the money and give a thumbs up to the trades when you have to make them. Like there was such a deliberate, what's the right term, like gradual growth and development of the Astros' success. The Justin Verlander trade is similar, and the Justin Verlander signing. They just signed him to a 2 years extension, making him an Astro for the next 3 seasons, right? And maybe I'm wrong, the next 2 seasons. But forking over all that money, owner was finally comfortable doing that because not only did they win a World Series, but he understood that they have the right infrastructure in place to do it now. And the Orioles' ownership has been a huge issue. You're going to know this a million times better than I will, but it's a combination of employing the smartest, best people behind the scenes to rebuild your infrastructure. But then when the timing is right, you have to have an owner that is going to essentially spend more, make more. And, that's been a huge issue for this franchise.
He is Hunter Atkins. You can find him at the Houston Chronicle, of course, and at Hunter Atkins, Atkins 35, just like Mike Messina's number 35. And he's a New Yorker. And by the way, I spent the weekend in Manhattan. Still a great place. New York, there's no place like New York. You're down there in Houston doing the sports enterprise thing. From a New York perspective, to land in the middle of Houston, to find whatever avidity for sports you find there for the Texans, for whatever college of choice, or even the Cougars, whatever's going on in the community there. Where do the Astros lie in all of that amidst the Rockets' rubble of disappointment, right? And the Texans who've never really been able to get it done. And the Astros are, the engine that has gotten it done, quite frankly, lately, in a place where there hasn't been, it's not Boston, it's not New York, where there are championships on both sides of the water and all in these places. Houston's been a little different and sort of waited for the Astros since, I was waiting since J.R. Richard and Nolan Ryan and Julio Cruz, but guys like McClain were waiting since the toy cannon back in the 60s,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's got a very sad sports history for sure. If your question is is your question about, who are the darlings of the city, who are, or is your question, in a place like Houston, which team is still the most popular, the most fervent fan base?
Well, it's a football place, Texas, the whole state, right? Like, kind of, sort
Always.
of, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is what's remarkable, is that, I don't think it's a big deal, but there's nothing that any team can do to compete with the Texans. You just can't. The Texans, whether they lose, whether they win, it's always going to be about the Texans. But that's fine.
And you wonder how Houston got the team before L.A. did, right? It's because L.A.'s got two and can't figure it out. One just went to the Super Bowl. And to your point, this team's been slapping it around for 15 years, can't really figure it out. And, people can't quit them because of Earl and Dante and Bum and Love You Blue, right?
It's just the culture here. It just is what it is. You can't dismiss that, a Northeast culture, right? So you mentioned I grew up in New York City. Basically means it just means so much more there than it ever could mean, in this part of the South. But the Astros have done a really masterful job of making lifelong fans and rewarding the really patient lifelong fans. So to kind of circle back to Baltimore,
darkness. We have darkness and despair, Atkins. You've read, you've heard.
It's worth it, though. No, it's deserved because the team has been so crappy, but.
They've earned every empty seat. I say that. I mean, with their arrogance. Just the way the place has been operated. You've watched it from the outside. Nobody's feling sorry for Peter Angelos. You know what I mean?
No, and that I was going to say. That's an ownership issue, and I just don't. The team. There is hope for the fan base. They can be rewarded with a team that can have long-term success, even in the AL East. I really think that. I think that, even teams that are not going to spend in the top 1% of, the luxury tax, like the Yankees, although they're undervalued, they can compete now. And it's just going to take another probably 2 to 3 years of patience for everybody there in Baltimore. But my message is that it's going to be worth it for you guys. I think that, have full faith in Mike Elias. It's worth it. He's really, really smart. When your analogy about the Flintstones versus the Jetsons was rather brilliant. I thought that was great. And
I'm a writer by trade, Hunter. I don't.
I wouldn't know anything about that. So
we between my wife and John Harbaugh, who both say, don't make comparisons. Everything's a comparison. Everything in life's a comparison, right? Literally, Flintstones and Jetsons. That's what it's at, man,
Start imagining. Enjoy the fantasy that you guys are going to have flying cars, just like the Jetsons. It can happen.
I don't need flying cars. I need Justin Verlander on an affordable deal, is what I need. Hunter Atkins is here. He is Hunter Atkins 35 at the Houston Chronicle. He writes great writings about all sorts of sports types things. And what's hot in Houston? They selling a soccer ticket down there. Tell me about the Rockets. Tell me about college. I'm concerned about sports in our culture, maybe the bubble bursting a little bit here. And, I had a half-empty football stadium last year here in the National Football League. I remember what it took to get that franchise back here. I had PSLs I couldn't give away. We got a baseball team here with nothing going on, no fan base to speak of, nobody going to the stadium, and the lease that's up in 2 years. Like we have a different thing going on here than where Houston is really invested in sports, right? And in a big way, and it's been a big part of your town, right?
But how much of that, I asked this, earnestness,
Sure.
How much of that is about whatever the state of the city of Baltimore and its surrounding counties?
That's a fair question, my friend. I mean, that's the question we're asking here at Baltimore Positive, which is when you say I'm going to Baltimore 15 years ago and you were on an assignment coming in here writing about Cal Ripken or whatever, you would say, hey, I'm going to have a crab cake, I'm going to walk the harbor, I'm going to do this and that. Now the image is like The Wire and our mayor going to prison with FBI records and, like all of that and riots and all of that. We need to change that as a narrative. Having a baseball team that's not very good certainly doesn't make the people in the Sugar Lands, and in the suburbs and in the Cadies, where my cousin lives down there in Houston and loves the Astros and loves Jose Altuve and all that, want to drive into the city any more than she wanted to drive in 10 years ago when the Astros were losing 120 games. I mean, bad is bad. Full price is full price, and I got other things to do on a June night if my team is 19-51 or whatever, right?
Sure, but I'm also saying that in 2019, Houston is the most multicultural city in the country, meaning that there are more people from more places here than there are anywhere else.
They even let New Yorkers in, huh?
They, well, I don't know if they let New Yorkers in as much as maybe some of us have.
You don't get a real car; they stamp your passport.
I can ride a bike; it's fine. But. And on top of that, Houston by 2050 is going to be the third most populous city in the country. It's going to surpass Chicago. So demographic changes here, I think, are absolutely in line with a reinvigorated sports team. It helps that the teams here are winning. Even if the Rockets are going to fall short, they're a fantastic product. And even if the Texans are only going to go 500 or maybe 3 or 4 above 500, there's still always going to be a sellout every single game, just because there really is like that sort of fervent sports scene overall. So, for Baltimore, my heart goes out to a city like that. I think I visited several times. I love that city, and I hope that you guys have better fortune and there's some symbiotic relationship between that and the emerging success of the Orioles.
Well, if you ever make a trip in and want to find out who's taller, me or Altuve, we're both Venezuelan, so that's good. I'll make sure you don't get a tourist crab cake when you're up here, Hunter. So, hey, the disappointment of the Rockets. I mean, you mentioned them as a brand, right? And look, I mean, we're 38 miles from Washington, and Ted Leon just may as well make that 1,000 miles. They won the Stanley Cup last year, promised to bring it to Baltimore, never did, right? The basketball team was our team, pilfered out, changed the name, all that stuff. They're trying to figure it out, but they don't have a Hakeem. You know what I mean? They don't have, a Clyde. They don't have that sort of Rudy, that other part of it, like the Orioles have here, right? And I guess the Capitals will have now that Ovechkin won down the line. Once you win, the Rockets have that, and there is a level of expectation. As you said, a great product, but there is that we're going to finish in second place that never really got Bagwell and Biggio where they wanted to go, right?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Are you saying are you interested in getting my
that
take
they need to win
on the Wizards? Or?
No, I'm saying the Rockets need to win. And at some point I sense huge disappointment on the backside that they're the little engine that comes close but never gets there.
There's some of that, but there is in the Golden State era that we're in, there also is a realistic understanding of the competition that has stood in the way of Daryl Morey, Mike D'Antoni, and James Harden. There's no sensible NBA fan anywhere in the country, and obviously definitely in Houston, who thinks that we're Golden State to never be one of the greatest teams of all time, one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. The Rockets wouldn't have won a championship by now, right? Like, think about 2 seasons ago. If Chris Paul doesn't pull a hamstring, we all assume that the Rockets could have gotten past the Warriors and definitely would have beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers and had a title. It's not a legend that couldn't or necessarily falling short so much as it's gotten beaten by one of the greatest teams of all time. I really do think there's a much more measured understanding about that. the pressure that's on them now is how do you capitalize on peak James Harden? That window is probably, at a minimum 1 more season, at a maximum probably 2 more seasons. Harden I think will be very good for several years, but this version that has been so transcendent, that can't just, you can't get production like that for more than probably another 2 seasons. So how are they going to find a way to get past the Warriors? Even if the Warriors lose Kevin Durant to free agency, I still think it's a better team than Houston, even without him. So, that's where the pressure is, because they know they're so close. They know they have to capitalize on the talent they have, and have a really, really short window of time to do it.
Always a pleasure to have Hunter Atkins on the program from down at the Houston Chronicle. He's doing sports enterprise stuff down there and writing what we called takeouts back in the day when I worked at the paper, but that was like 30 years ago, and I was just a baby then. Hey, man, we skip Verlander, but we get the great Wade Miley. Wade Miley is going to be on the hill. I tell you, we couldn't straighten that out. Now we're going to have the indignity of losing to him. I mean, it really is an amazing little reclamation all the way around for Verlander, Cole, Miley, and as you've said, sort of, out-of-pocket guys that have come in and picked this thing up to go along with all of the Springers and the guys that were sitting there as well. They're going to be a tough out in October, right? I mean, this is a pretty good baseball team with, again, high expectations to bring another parade to Houston.
Yeah, no, I think that at a minimum they're going to return to the to the ALCS. I think that whoever they face in the first round, they should be able to beat. At the moment, looking at the landscape of the AL, getting the World Series is going to be harder. Obviously, winning the World Series is basically like a crapshoot these days. But no, pencil them in for the ALCS. They're so unbelievably deep, and relative to the best teams in the AL, they're really, really top heavy. Meaning, like when you have to face Verlander and Cole in the first 2 games of a series, it's just daunting, right? And we're looking at the landscape of the AL. Who's a better 1-2 punch right now than those guys? Snell has had a little bit of a rough patch for the Rays, but they don't have, they're not, whoever they want to put in as an opener or using their 2-3 spots, whether it's Charlie Morton or if they maybe even deal for somebody around the deadline and be savvy, it's not going to be better than Verlander and Cole. So then in terms of the Yankees, I think they still are figuring out what their rotation, who the stalwarts of their rotation are going to be, right? Like James Paxton is outstanding, but even he, obviously battled injuries a little bit. He's just been up and down this year. Severino, who they may not even get back. Tanaka's a big game pitcher, but he's certainly beatable. The Red Sox, Chris Sale has been so inconsistent. You see where I'm going with all this. Right now the Astros in the AL, they have the best or the most top-heavy sort of talent in the league.
Well, the other thing is they're going to be the 1 seed. I mean, by all accounts, unless something really drastic happens, given their lead.
Hold on. The way that fans still are overlooking the Twins is really wrong. Not only are they a really good team, but we are all taking for granted that every team in that division, other than them, is trying to lose. They're going to have breeze to the playoffs. So in terms
and they're probably going to get better. This is going to be a year they're going to go in. They're going to deal 100%. Prospects. They're going to get a hitter. They're going to get they're going to get an arm. They're going to get a bullpen. They're the ones that are going to load up in a way where the Yankees and Astros are like, I gave last year, and the Tampa Bay Rays are like, we never give. So yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
Minnesota's got some money for sure. They should be top of class to get whoever's Machado they have, right?
Essentially, yeah. They realize that they caught lightning in a bottle with this with the roster shakeup.
Don't you feel like good for them? Isn't there a part of you like good for those Twins fans? Let them have some fun.
Sure, of course. Oh, of course. The guy who I feel worse for is Joe Mauer, right? I mean, the guy gave his whole career to that city, that team. He grew up there, and he never had a big playoff moment. And it's a shame that he couldn't have found a way to play longer, to be successful longer, or maybe just somehow to be born 2 or 3 years later. Because I think that it would have been really special, I think, for him to be part of this team.
Joe Mauer. He's no Adley Rushman, believe me. I tell you, I'm here in Baltimore. I found that out.
Oh, that old cliche. Now you sound like my mom.
Mauer with power. We have Weeders fever here. You know, it's all over with. Hunter Atkins, 35 is the way to find him out on Twitter. Thanks for being a good friend to the show and coming on and yucking it up and talking about the toy department with us from time to time. Appreciate it. Enjoy the baseball, and please don't beat us too badly, Wade Miley.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, and if you do find your way into politics, feel free to be one of the most open candidates about legalizing marijuana. That could definitely uplift the economy of Maryland.
It's already medicinal here, and we do segments every week on cannabis and CBD with our dear partners at Curio Wellness. I'm not wearing the hat, but it's somewhere around here, and I can put it on if I want to. So, yes, we are, it's a different kind of state here. You're down in Texas. Good luck with all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Be well, Hunter Atkins, 35. I guess he's doing sports enterprise pieces on our friends like Eugene Monroe and Ricky, who's got the side business as well in CBD. So, hey, man, education's for everyone out on the internet. You can be educated by Hunter Atkins at Hunter Atkins 35 at the Houston Chronicle, where he is chronicling the enterprise of sports writing. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Baltimore Positive coming to Fadley's at Lexington Market. We will be with Mayor Jack Young on the 20th in the morning at historic, legendary Lexington Market. Yes, I'm having the crab cake, the big fat fries, and the coleslaw. Some ketchup on the side and a little bit of cocktail and something wet, cold, and lagerish probably will be getting in my belly on Thursday. So I am delighted to be at the market for the summer. So giving them a shout out for Baltimore Positive. We got so many awesome sponsors, and I want to tell everybody about all of them this week because they keep us in business. So we got so many. Let's start with this. Up in Harford County, Full Circle Tire and Auto back with us again. And, of course, Dave worked on the Nasty Van. He can work on your vehicle as well. 410-676-CARS. If you're up there, they have the 1995 oil change. And if your AC's on the fritz, they do it 2 pounds up to $69.95 up to 2 pounds R134. The Ludus needs to get me better plugs. I'm just giving him a hard time. Johnny D's. Everything homemade at Johnny D's. I've had the shrimp salad. I've had the open-faced sandwiches many times. I've had the chips and the fries many times. I've had a beverage once or twice as well. Proudly serving Parkville since 1954. Johnny D's Lounge and JohnnyD's.com. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live and hopefully in full sound, if not full HD color. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.